our Committee of the Whole meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
John Baisley, First Ward.
Bill Carlos, Second Ward.
Michael Sofone, Fourth Ward.
Ann Shershen, Sixth Ward.
Todd Tancredi, Supervisor.
Alicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, Attorney for the town.
We have one item on our agenda tonight, and that is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. Our Rec Department, in conjunction with Joey Moore, who is a senior at Vassar College, junior. Part of his program has been to come into our Rec Department, and he's interned for the last few months, and they've done a survey and compiled the results, and so Tom and Joey are here tonight to give us the results of our master plan update, and I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, and Tom spearheads our rec department as department head, and we want to know what the residents think of our programming and what they'd like to see in terms of programming. So this is a great way to update, ourselves on the needs and the desires of our residents. So Joey and Tom, why don't you come on up and tell us what you've learned.
Supervisor Tancredi, town board members, residents, thank you for giving us this chance to report to you about an ongoing process we started 5 months ago. We are always looking at how the Recreation and Parks Department can run more efficiently and do a better job for the residents of the town. A major thing we have been lacking is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Most towns hire, for tens of thousands of dollars, an engineering or planning firm to write a report for them. I felt strongly that it is not necessary that we should use the resources of our community. To that end, I approached Vassar College to have an intern assigned to my department for this semester to write this plan. I want to introduce to you Joseph Moore, a junior from Vassar College. Joey is an urban studies major and a Chinese major from just outside Boston. He has spent 15 hours a week this semester on this project. More importantly, he has brought a fresh look at what we do from somebody who is outside of our organization. In front of you, town board members, is a copy of the first draft of the plan. Joey will give you a brief summary tonight. This is not a complete plan ready to go. For instance, it does not include a list of projects to do in every park or a list of programs to run. It does give us a starting place to focus continued planning and work. Likewise, I want to emphasize this is the first draft. There are many chances to change it, to add to it before we adopt it. After this evening, the next step would be to refer this plan to the Recreation Committee for review before it would finally come back to the town board for further public comment and adoption. Before I turn the meeting over to Joey, I want to publicly thank him for the professional effort as well as the time he has spent on this. He has helped me to remember that recreation does make a difference, both in the individual lives and the life of the community. Joey?
Thank you very much. So I will walk through the creation of this plan and at the same time what it contains. So we started with some demographic analysis and geographic analysis, looking at who lives in the town of Poughkeepsie. This comes from the American Community Survey and the U.S. Census. The most recent American Community Survey data was released in 2014 for the town of Poughkeepsie, and the most recent census was in 2010. So the data before you comes from both of those things. I used this data to look at who would be using parks and recreation services to make sure that the department is serving all residents of the town. Next, before you is an inventory of the parks in the town of Poughkeepsie. The town has 20 parks, some quite large and some quite small, ranging from Peach Hill Park, which is the largest and thought of more as a park preserve, a more natural area, going down to some of the more neighborhood or pocket parks, such as Carriage Hill, just around the corner. This chart before you comes from the National Recreation and Parks Association, which is through their ProRageous program, which looks at data from parks and recreation agencies throughout the country. And this is showing where the town of Poughkeepsie stands in relation to all agencies and other agencies similar in size. So that's in density, not in size. Putting it just above the mean for all agencies and slightly below the mean for, median for population, or slightly below the lower quartile of similar population density. Through our process, the beginning of our process, we sent out a survey through the recreation mailing list, and that's people that have been involved with the recreation department before from different programming efforts or through summer camp, that sort of thing. The survey asked a number of questions ranging from recreation usage to local parks usage to how you get to parks. This final product or draft only uses some of this data, but the data is still available to the recreation department for further use and development of programming and other and parks. Currently, the data is divided along the lines of town-wide parks and neighborhood parks. I'll come back to this later, but this is a division that will be de-emphasizing as we move forward, but as the survey was sent out while we were still working in this framework, that's how the data is presented. So this survey and this master plan function in really three sections. That's the physical, programmatic, and organizational structure of the department. Physical looks mostly at parks themselves. Programmatic looks at programming and services, and organization looks at communication, finance, and the department, the structure of the department. So I'll start by talking a little bit about the physical findings of the survey. One of the most important things that we got out of it was the physical condition of townwide parks and neighborhood parks, where the distribution seems to be that the physical condition of parks in the town of Poughkeepsie is considered relatively average. That is not excellent and not terribly lacking. But it is very notable that the townwide parks show a much higher skew than neighborhood parks.
And Joey, just, I don't know if you'll cover this later in the program, but just so people know in case you don't, townwide parks we're considering are larger parks, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The townwide parks that were considered townwide parks were Greenvale, Red Oaks Mill, and Stanley Still.
Okay, thank you.
One of the questions that the survey asked was about amenities that residents would like to see added to parks. One of the things that came up as somewhat of a surprise, but very strongly throughout, was a need for picnic tables, benches, and just generally places to sit. The parks are lacking in those, and that's encouraging to hear because it's a relatively easy thing to add. Additionally, other things that we saw were playground equipment, shelters, and walkways came up. We also asked about the usage of neighborhood and townwide parks, the reasoning being instead of addressing exactly what residents might want to see as a specific solution, we want to understand the problems and the needs that we are attempting to address, and that will give opportunities for more creative solutions. What came up very strongly was that parks are used heavily for walking, playground usage, and sports. Walking just shooting much higher than expected. Oh, sorry. Next, we turn to programmatic usage and programming. I apologize, the draft in front of you, some of the labels were cut off on the charts, but that's been fixed in the presentation before you. One of the things that we saw was that there's an interest and need for more diversity in programming, ranging from fitness and wellness programs to more programming across the board for different age groups. So there's a high skew towards senior and youth programming without as much of a focus on adult programming. Additionally, things that stand out are the summer camp is shown to be very needed, which is encouraging, as that is something that exists. Another question that was asked that did not go into this draft but went into this presentation and is in a later draft was what reasons prevent you or your household from using Town of Poughkeepsie recreation programs. And the most stunning thing is that just a lack of general knowledge and awareness of what is being offered, and that's covered later in this presentation. And then finally we turn towards organizational from the survey findings, and this speaks back to the previous slide and about how the recreation department can best get in contact with residents. So interesting things that came up was that the best way that we see from the survey to get in touch with residents is an email newsletter and posting on the website. However, how residents who responded to this survey responded is that they learn about recreation programming from the website. I think this in part has to do with the fact that this survey was distributed primarily by email. The next step in the process is we held a community engagement meeting on April 5th in the Senior Center. And this was a roundtable charrette-style meeting looking to gain input from residents in a more free-form dialogue style. And once again, we talked in the terms of physical, programmatic, and organizational. In the physical, residents overwhelmingly voiced their interest and passion for their local neighborhood parks or pocket parks. They were interested in how they could get involved in their local parks and were interested in helping take stewardship over them. In the programmatic, residents were interested in becoming involved with programming offered by the departments and made suggestions for more creative solutions, but because this wasn't a small group of people, the individual opinions of recreation programming should be studied more. Once again, one of the things that came up with from this was a lack of knowledge of the programming that was already offered. And there were several moments during the meeting where someone said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we did this?" only to find that that's something that does currently happen. And then under organizational, we discussed that more, ways that we could get involved. And residents had raised ideas about involvement that simply had not occurred. Things such as lawn signs and signage at parks, things that we hadn't really thought of. So this meeting was incredibly valuable for that reason. So now we turn from that to some of our findings. We're going to look first at the physical goals. So the town of Poughkeepsie has an abundance of pocket parks or neighborhood parks, these really small-scale parks that fit in and are local. They're places where community can develop, kids can play, and adults can come together. However, because there's so many of them, maintenance can be very difficult. And often the way that they've been sited within their neighborhoods creates many issues with engagement. With what we saw from the survey and from the meeting, we found that people are passionate about their local parks. This is something that they could rally around and something that they care about. And so for that reason, and because of the issues with how they are physically built, one of the places where we see opportunity is in collaboration with the recreation department working with the neighborhoods that care about these specific parks to improve them. So in 2009, a national organization called Kaboom, worked with the recreation department, Stop and Shop, and a number of other local players for the installation of a playground at Crestwood. This was a quite incredible installation, and it's a beautiful playground today. And that style of engagement is something that I think we could see more of, not necessarily with national organizations coming in, but more with the local department working with communities. Projects that could be driven by the community are things such as community gardens, the installation of benches, which we saw so much interest in, play equipment, and landscaping. These are things where there can be high involvement. And not only does this involvement make the space better, in doing it, it creates investment and community around it. So we turn now to playgrounds. The town of Poughkeepsie has many playgrounds located throughout in many of these smaller parks. However, because there's so many of them and they are difficult to maintain, some of them have had to be removed. And only some of them have been able to be replaced. In coming years, the department will make more of an effort to replace equipment, but once again, we'll be interested in working with neighborhoods on more creative forms of play, ways that don't require a $70,000 piece of equipment. Among our other physical goals are accessibility and inclusion. So that's making the parks accessible for all. That's for differently abled people, for handicaps, for the blind, making these spaces where everyone is welcomed. This is also something where it's looking at the less physical accessibility. That is the accessibility to who lives nearby. At what point does it become no longer walkable? Or is there sufficient parking? How do you actually access it, regardless of ability? Also, there's a note in here about future developments. This has to do with how more parks are added to the town. With new developments, there is a dedication of land or fees in place of land, and the Recreation Department, in addition to the town code chapter that gives a comprehensive list of criteria, is interested in maintaining the quality of incoming parks and incoming fees. So this is a focus on public space and making sure that these are quality spaces for everyone, for all residents. This section just adds a few notes to be kept in mind as land or fees are accepted. We also looked at connectivity. Because there are very few sidewalks throughout the town of Poughkeepsie, connectivity to the parks and between the parks can be quite difficult. As it stands, they are mostly in isolation from one another. One of the things noted here is that Peach Hill Park could be connected to Dutchess County Rail Trail through a through a trail that runs along power lines or in that general area. That's one place where there's opportunity, but keeping in mind connectivity moving forward will be important to the development of parks. Additionally, we look now at sports fields, where the town will continue to invest in and maintain sports fields, assuring that sports fields are being allocated for sports that have the most interest and most usage in the town, and also looking at the accompanying infrastructure of fields such as dugouts or concession stands and innovative ways that these can, that the Recreation Department can work with other players such as leagues in the construction of these. We also looked at additional facility development. These are things such that residents have brought forward, innovative ideas such as skate parks, dog parks, a town pool, or a splash pad. And this note is basically to indicate that the department is not close to these ideas and is open to working with residents in their development. We next turn to the Kayak Center, the construction of which has begun, and this has been in collaboration with the village of Wappinger, the village of Wappinger Falls, the town of Wappinger, partially funded by a community development block grant from Dutchess County. We're very excited that the center is anticipated to open in the autumn of 2016. The next note is on the scale of parks and addressing how the department has already used parks and how it plans to classify them. Previously, because of the historical development of the town and the way that facilities had already been set up, parks were categorized into townwide and neighborhood divisions. This meant that the townwide parks that were assumed to serve a larger constituency were allocated more resources. And moving forward, part of the goal of this master plan is to de-emphasize this distinction, to allocate resources to projects in all neighborhoods and not focus just on these. Maintaining these facilities will be very important, and maintaining quality in them is, of course, vital. But just to shift the mindset to allow more development in more neighborhood parks, in more local parks. There's a chart in your pamphlet from the capital, addressing the capital budget. This is from the National Recreation and Parks Association, once again from ProRages. And I'll let you peruse that at your own will. That's just notes on how capital budget is allocated and how we compare to other places throughout the country. We next turn to programmatic goals, divided into 5 categories, looking at youth programming, adult programming, senior programming, community program, and program planning. Youth programming, we looked at youth sports, summer camp, and other youth programming opportunities. Youth sports the department currently has affiliations with 2 youth baseball leagues, the Cal Ripken and the Little League, as well as a girls softball league, and additionally has affiliations with a youth soccer league. These are valuable affiliations. As these leagues continue to use spaces, they make capital investments in the facilities that they use throughout the town. This also notes that there may be changes in what leagues the department affiliates with, and just makes space for the department to affiliate with leagues as things arise. So if that's a decline in membership in one league or an interest in new membership in another league, this allows the department to continue to allocate resources. Next note is on summer camp. And the department runs the Greenvale Getaway Day Camp at Greenvale Park, and we want to maintain the affordability of the camp, providing accessible and inclusive services to all residents of the town. There's a note that the camp could be expanded, but this is not necessarily vital at the moment. Other youth programming. From the survey, there was indicated interest in other types of programming, arts, dance, individual sports. Potential programming could add to what the department already has to offer, including after-school programming. With all this programming, there's a note that offerings should be studied in further depth, and that each of these should be studied before any motion is made forward. Additionally, with youth programming, we'd like to see more conversation with local school districts to address the needs of the youth. Next, we looked at adult programming. The town of Poughkeepsie does not currently have a large amount of adult programming, in part because there's a large number of privatized programming options in the town of Poughkeepsie. Issues with privatization is that it excludes some residents and does not provide the same recreation opportunities for all town residents. And so the recreation department could supplement the private options to make more options available. And there's been a large interest in adult fitness and continuing education. For senior programming, the town has done incredibly well with the opening of the senior center. And the senior center just provides incredible services and a place for seniors to meet. The sense of community is fantastic. However, the town of Poughkeepsie shows an aging population moving forward, which is anticipated to put more pressure on the senior center, including baby boomers. For this reason, we see much further development with senior programming and potentially the opening of further facilities. With community programming, the department has thrived with programs such as the Halloween Parade or the Apple Cider Ramble at Peach Hill Park. These programs bring a sense of community to the town and really activate engagement with the town. Finally, on program planning or business planning for programming, this is to note that the development of new programs should be studied in further depth to assure that there is a need and that the cost is that there will be continued revenue from programming. Yes. Next, turn to organizational goals. Okay. So I guess the computer's shutting down. Fantastic.
Yeah, that always happens to me too.
I guess we'll continue without it.
That's all right, just continue.
The majority of the pictures are all set for anyway. For organizational goals, the department the department currently consists of a recreation director who's in charge of parks, facilities, and programs, an assistant director, the recreation leader, and a part-time secretary, as well as a part-time senior center staff. And then seasonal employees are hired for maintenance, summer camp, and other specific jobs. This leaves the staff to balance a very large workload inherent in their positions. For this reason, we see the potential, and the department has had some amount of success in taking interns, but internships are also a lot of work for department staff to coordinate. We see incredible benefit in expanding the hours of the secretary and or hiring a staff member to focus more on recreation programming. Mm-hmm. This would allow the department to create more offerings and to just generally grow and improve. In terms of communication, we see the opportunity for the department to explore new methods of communication. This includes updating email systems, updating websites, more engagement on social media, potentially working with an intern, and other perhaps printed works. We also see collaboration possible with more traditional forms of media, such as the Poughkeepsie Journal or Southern Dutchess News, something of those likes. Additionally, we see the potential for further engagement with specific changes being made in parks using the Dutchess County parcel access to generate mailing addresses so that when changes are being made in one specific park, there is an opportunity to collaborate more with residents, more specifically on that project. There's also a note that media will continue to evolve. Things are changing rapidly in how we communicate, and the department will need to keep its eyes peeled for how that changes. Finally, we turn to community support groups or friends groups. The Friends of Peach Hill Park have been a fantastic resource to the town. They've just done immeasurable amounts of work for Peach Hill Park. And we would like to see the formation of a similar sort of group for neighborhood parks or town parks as a whole. An ability to coordinate volunteers and labor to improve spaces and perhaps even coordinate programming. Perhaps most importantly, however, they would build a strong sense of community within the town, create something for people to rally around. And that leads to our conclusion. I'd like to note that, like all local government, the more our community is able to engage, the higher the quality that will be delivered. Continued input is vital to the progress of the department. Thank you.
Joe, very good
you.
report. Thank you very much. Gives us a lot to think about.
Thank you, Joey. We appreciate your many hours of service to the town. We appreciate Vassar, I guess, allowing you to do this as part of your course study. So it's, I agree with Councilman Safone. It's valuable information that we'll be able to use for years to come. So thank you for all your hard work.
Agreed, Joe, it's a great working tool to move forward with. We worked with you on it. I mean, you've done a great job. The small amount of time you had, I really give you a lot of credit for getting it all together, except your computer failed. But besides that, it was fantastic. You did really good. No, it's something to be proud of.
Well, I hope we do some work on getting our parks up to speed, and you come back to visit us and say, hey, look, I played a major role in that. And you guys did a good job.
Tom, well, you're here. I want to thank you. As Joey mentioned, we don't have a robust staff in our Recs department, and Tom Meyering and Brian Molino do a great job with the resources they're given to run our parks. And you have to remember, over the last 3 or 4 years, with the major addition of our senior center, you do a great job with what you do here. Tom puts out a lot of fires. There's very few things that we deal with because Tom takes care of them, at the department level. So while you're here, I wanted to make sure you knew how much we appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
So thanks, both of you. Jim, if the town board's ready, maybe next week, we'll confer with Tom, but we'll have to get this on for adoption in the near future, the master plan. Okay? All right, let's go through the committee reports. Jay, why don't you go through them? I've got it on Mike's phone, but I don't have an agenda.
Okay. Finance Committee, nothing to report. Fire Advisory, Joe's not here. We have nothing to report. Government Operations,
Nothing to report.
Personnel.
Only that per Recreation's master plan, we need to hire some people to help out town.
Recreation, nothing to report. Joey did a great job on his report tonight. And along with the senior center, as he said, everything's going along just fine over the senior center. They got a small project to put in some planting beds over there. It looks like they're getting ready to start. That should be a nice project to help the seniors along. Technology and equipment.
We met the big issue seems to be the upgrade in software we have to do. And there was a lot of input on that. And nothing further to report. Water and sewer, we started a discussion on drainage issues. And maybe at the July meeting, we can have something for the board to think about and talk about. Otherwise, nothing more to report.
That it?
That's it.
All right. Why don't I suspend or just welcome the public, open up for a public comment on town issues?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone here who'd like to address the board? All right, see no one. Make a motion to resume the rules. Mrs. Gow, did you want to say something? Yeah. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I want to thank Mrs. Gow. Well, she's here. I want to, she spends I don't know how many hours of her own time focused on Millbank Park. And then those of you who live in the Hagentown area, if you've driven by, you've seen new plantings and just a upgrade in the condition of the park. And a lot of that has to do with Mrs. Gow and her input and suggestions and work over there. So we appreciate residents taking an interest, Mrs. Gow, and appreciate all your hard work over there at Millbank.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, this particular live stream, Eagle Cam, is down in Washington, D.C.
You might want to take a seat, Ruth. It'll be a better picture.
We'll get you on the
excuse me.
microphone better,
Okay.
too. There you go.
And they have some babies that have hatched.
Oh.
And unfortunately, the view is not as good as it was in the beginning, but if you go on there, you will see it. And I have some information about the eaglets that you can look at later. My thinking was this. We have some bird boxes that we've contributed to the park, Hagentown, I call it Millbank. And I was thinking that it's a park that's in away from water versus, let's say, the Quiet Cove Park. And wouldn't it be nice if we had some way of visiting these birds while they're there? They have cameras that you can get that will monitor the bird boxes, and that would do the river life, which would be down at Quiet Cove or, let's say, over at Millbank. And it would be a wonderful addition to our community for people that are homebound, that could never maybe get to a park, but would like to, and it would bring it into their home. This could be brought in by computers. My sister in New Jersey has been watching this one that I sent to her regarding the eagles, and she said, and if you look it up, she said a couple days ago she was still watching. They're getting awfully big. There are two of them in this nest.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, wouldn't this be something nice that we could share with everybody? And all the parks would have this. It wouldn't just be, I mean, you could do it in other ones too. Those two I thought of because we did give those bird boxes. We're going to put a bluebird box up, but we have one for owls and hawks. And we know that they have nested there because the first box, unfortunately, fell down, and they put a new one up, and that one, I'm sure, is going to be, it was properly put up by Tom, and the bluebird box he'll be putting up soon, I think. So this might be something, because on the Hudson, there are eagles there.
Yeah.
For sure. And we even have them at Casperkill. They're there. There's a pair there on the golf course. So it was a thought that, we might possibly do something like this to open it up to more people. Something like this would be fun.
Sure. Now, the bluebird box, that's supposed to be facing a certain direction. Is it southeast or southwest? There's a certain, I think, and I'm not positive, but I think if you check a bluebird box, you're supposed to put up facing a certain direction.
I believe put it southeast.
Southeast. I think so too. Okay. Great, Mrs. Guy. Well, that's a good suggestion. Like I said, we appreciate all your hard work over there, and I've noticed a definite improvement in the beauty of the park and the conditions, so we appreciate all your input, and it's always nice to have you come in and share your thoughts and ideas with us.
Well,
Thank you.
We can thank Stop and Shop.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they have, we've worked out a situation where they give us the items that they couldn't sell, and then what we distribute them, we give some to the senior center, and we put some into that park. But they're very willing to do this, and it really has made an improvement. People stop and even give their plants from their home. I've gone to their houses and dug up plants and put them in. So and people really seem to like that kind of thing. And I think if we think about that in the other parks, it would make a change as far as people's attitudes.
Yes,
People love beauty.
I agree.
So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? I see no one. I make a motion to resume the rules.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Jay?
Be it resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby adjourn the executive session to consider the following matters to wit. 1, litigation to discuss the litigation strategy of the case known as New Hamburg Terminal. 2, personnel matters to wit, a meeting to discuss the hiring, firing, promotion, demotion, and employment history of the particular individuals who need not be identified at this time. 3, confidential communications between the attorney and his client, the town board based on attorney-client privilege. Be it further resolved, there will be no action appropriating money. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Town board adjourns to executive session at 7:40 PM.